DRA Global is a leading international engineering project delivery and operations management group with an impressive track record spanning more than 3 decades. DRA Global's team of experts drive innovation through world-class consulting services and support clients across multiple sectors to achieve their goals in minerals and metals processing, mining, infrastructure, energy, water, industrial, operations, maintenance and shutdown services.
Welcome everybody, I'm James Smith. I am the EVP for Operations and Advisory at DRA Global, and it's my pleasure today to have a discussion with Dean Gehrig from Newmont. Dean is the Executive Vice President and the CTO of Newmont Corporation. So thanks Dean and welcome. And Dean brings with him obviously a wealth of experience in the mining industry, having done 30 years in the industry with entities like Rio Tinto, BHP, Freeport, and obviously Newmont. So thank you, Dean, for giving us some of your insights today, and we really look forward to that.
Oh, James, thanks for inviting me, and a very good early morning to you. I know it's early, and welcome to everybody else that's going to be joining today from the Mining Minutes calls. Thank you.
Dean, Newmont is obviously a global leader in the mining space. As a leader, what is really driving Newmont's vision of the future of mining?
You know, James, it's probably in many ways an extension of what we've been doing for quite some time. It's maybe just doing it with different tools and trying to get better and more proficient. But there's 3 main areas where we focus, and I'm sure it's very similar to a lot of organizations. One, we're always trying to improve safety. So anything that we can do that helps make our work safe, helps our people to go home safe at the end of the day, that's an area where we're going to focus and apply technology. Also around improving operating performance. At Newmont in particular, we're always looking to see what we can do to improve margins. We can't control the price of gold, but we can control what we produce it for. And then finally, and this is taking much more of a center stage in the last couple of years, is improving environmental performance. So those are the areas that we'll continue to focus on, and I know we're going to play a big role for mines in the future.
And as you look forward, are those similar drivers that you will expect in the future? I mean, in terms of further innovation and technology and transformation, are these similar drivers that you are looking forward in the future?
Yeah, I think as I think about those 3 areas, I also see probably 3 key focus areas as well to help improve in those 3 areas that I mentioned. The first one being standardization. And the reason standardization is important is because it allows us to then replicate best practice. So we have 12 operating sites around the world, and it's not helpful if only one site has the best practice and we can't rapidly replicate that to our other sites. And so standardization helps us to do that. I would say second would probably be automation. And this allows us really to reduce variability and increase predictability. And so when we can do those things, we're able to operate the business better. And finally, and largely what supports the environmental framework and the work that we're seeing there is around decarbonization. And it's really around reducing greenhouse gas emissions, reducing our carbon footprint. And all 3 of these things, for Newmont in particular, they support our full potential program. And that's all around improving safety and increasing margins.
Okay, and as you look around the wider mining industry, I mean, are these common ambitions you see across the sector? And do you think most mining entities will eventually move in this direction?
Yeah, James, I think that they are common ambitions, but they're held to various degrees across the industry. So, for example, I mentioned standardization is important to us. That's not important to all mining companies. If you're a mining company that's a one-site company, it's you could argue maybe you're already standardized. Some companies look at standardization as actually stifling creativity, and so those things have to be managed. You don't want to put in standardization for standardization's sake, and you want to make sure you're still supporting people to be creative. but unless you're not going to realize the full benefits of digitization unless it can be supported by standardization. Now, if I think about automation, I think most companies embrace this. And whether they're on one end of the spectrum, like we are with our Boddington operation and our autonomous haul trucks, or whether it's as simple as a pre-programmed drone survey. I mean, that's another example of automation. I think this is a very wide play field, and I think that a lot of companies are doing that. And I would say finally in this area around decarbonization, investors are pushing that much harder than we've seen before. And so while the companies, I would say today, we don't necessarily have a standard approach on this, I think that we're going to see a lot more convergence on this in the next 5 years.
Okay, thanks. And just on the Newmont journey today, can you briefly describe, what has your digital journey been to date, particularly focusing on some of the examples around Borden and Boddington, perhaps, and maybe others that come to mind? Okay. Our digital journey within Newmont started back in 2017. That's when we can actually specifically look and say that we were very intentional about looking at an enterprise level around digitization. And at that time, we were asking ourselves the question, what can we do to benefit? Where are the areas that we can probably improve the most? And what we concluded was that the areas to focus on was in automation, advanced process control, connected worker was another area, which is kind of a big area, and then also smart mine, which was another kind of big area as a title that we gave it, that covers things from ore control to blasting to lots of other things that fall within that umbrella. Now, what that work led to get to your question around Boddington, the autonomous fleet installation at Boddington really was a result of the automation project that we started back in 2017. And we've continued that journey with autonomous drills, underground loaders. So we're continuing to apply it. So it wasn't just looking at one site as an example, but really how do we leverage that technology at an enterprise level? Now, going to the second part of your question, if I look at Borden, so Borden is our first electrified mine, and it's really a keystone site in our decarbonization pathway. So the lessons that we're learning at Boron, they're going to be instrumental to us as we continue our decarbonization journey. And there's also a lot of things that we're learning and advantages that we actually didn't appreciate. And an interesting story, the last time I was visiting there, I was talking to one of the miners, and I asked them, tell me about this experience. What do you think about working at this mine? And the response I got wasn't what I was expecting. I was expecting the miner to talk about the technology, having to learn it, how it operates compared the performance compared to other diesel equipment that this operator had used before. And what they talked about was how clean the air was. And it was actually the quality of the working conditions underground that was the most important for that person. And this miner had the opportunity to work in a mine much closer to home and chose to make a further commute because of the quality of the work environment. So I think there's a lot of things that we need to learn about electrification and digitization that actually makes it a better workplace and more attractive for our employees. Can we dwell a little bit on electrification, and based on your successes to date, what is the future strategy for Newmont around electrification? So we have a goal, and we've set our targets around the Science-Based Target Initiative, and as a result of that, we're targeting a 30% reduction by 2030, and then also to be carbon neutral by 2050. And we have a pathway today of how we're going to do that. And there's a number of strategies within that. We're looking at microgrid improvements. We're looking at renewable energy generation, electrification. So it's going to be a suite of things. There's not any one thing that's going to get us to be able to successfully and sustainably reduce our carbon footprint. And as I mentioned, we've already identified multiple options for achieving the 2030 goal. And really now we're just in the process of working through to identify which suite of these solutions is the optimal pathway for us. Okay, thanks, Dean. I just want to move a little bit on to the issue of driving true value out of some of these innovation and technology journeys to date. And, we often hear that that one of the biggest challenges is the implementation challenge, making these things happen on sites and getting people to come along on that journey. Would you agree with that? And how have you found that implementation challenge?
Yeah, I think that you make a lot of good points there, James. It'll be nice to talk about. To us, innovation actually also includes anything that's new to Newmont. So we want to treat it in the same sort of way. So whether we actually were involved in innovation or whether we're bringing in new technology that actually allows us to innovate the way that we work, we somewhat treat it the same way. And going back to what I said earlier, is that standardization is a key enabler. If you don't have standardized IT systems, operational technology systems, equipment, mine planning processes, then it's going to be a very difficult time to support any sort of digital transformation, because you're just missing some basic and fundamental building blocks. But I also know that change management is critical. So standardization will provide the needed platform, but it's developing a thoughtful change management plan and including all the necessary stakeholders. That's an absolute must in this process. But I would even say before you go that far, you really need to focus on what you're trying to solve for with any sort of technology or innovation implementation. And you need to look at what are those critical few things, because what I've learned in this process is if you focus too broadly, you're not going to be able to deliver. And you need to really boil it down to just a critical few. And that's important because engineers like to dabble in technology and innovation. And so it's really important to have that disciplined business value added approach.
Okay, and what has your experience been like to date in getting that true value add out of some of these innovations and these technologies? Has it been positive? Have you been able to replicate that, as you say, standardize it across your sites so you get it running really well on one site and then you just roll it across the others? Has that been your experience?
Yeah, it's a journey. It's not a destination, and I can point to examples where we've done that well, and I can point to examples where we didn't do it so well. But we make sure we learn in any case. And I think our experience really has just continued to reinforce you need to be clear on your technology strategy. So, for example, you need to determine if you want to be a fast follower or if you're going to be on the leading edge of technology. So, for example, in our case, we decided we were going to be fast followers as it related to advanced process control, because there's so much available in that space. It's more a matter of determining what you need, how you want to implement it, and the change management around that. But if I look at water treatment, there's things we're doing in water treatment that we're just not finding commercially available anyplace else. So we actually have to be leading in that. So I think it's important to take a very intentional view on whether you're, where you're going to be leading and where you're going to be fast following.
That makes a lot of sense. Dean, if you look around the industry at the moment, are there any particular innovations or bits of technology that are particularly exciting right now that you're looking at and you think have got great potential for the future?
Yeah, I think there's a couple things. I guess the first one I'll talk about is just connectivity. So we talk about James, you and I talked about this before. Digitization is a term that gets thrown around a lot, and it means a lot of things to a lot of different people. But regardless of how you define it, everybody agrees that it really requires the collection of data and the use of data, turning data into information. And for some of our more remote mine sites, just having the connectivity we need is challenging. So we signed up last year as one of the beta testers, and we were the first mining company to do so with Elon Musk and the Starlink system from SpaceX. So we're actually using low Earth satellites for internet connectivity, which is really, we're just on the cutting edge of that because we recognize how important that is. So that's something I'll be following. I think that's going to be a game changer. I'm also very interested in what we're seeing around with digital twins. And that's really doing the mathematical modeling and process modeling to create a twin of the processing plant. So you can start to do simulations and understand what variables are really controlling. And all of these things support our full potential program. It's all about how do we increase our productivity and improve our margins. And I think finally for me is probably battery technology and power generation. I think we're going to really see a big focus and effort in that area. And I think a lot of mining companies are going to be almost playing catch up, because as the technology changes, we're going to be continuing to look at how do we incorporate this technology in our mine designs? How do we get the most value out of the technology? So those are probably the three areas that I'm really focused on and excited about.
Okay, excellent. Just a quick one on, I mean, how, as you look through some of your experiences, how tangible are some of those results? I mean, can you say, listen, we put APC in here, or we looked at the digital twin, and we can really show that we picked up the tonnage 5%, or is it that tangible, or was it a bit vague?
Yeah, no, as I mentioned before, and I didn't really expand on this, all of this work is actually part of what we call our Full Potential program, which is really Newmont's business improvement process. And as part of that process, we're quite rigorous about identifying what's the base case and then what's the improved case, and being able to measure that difference. And we actually have done auditing of that process to ensure that it's defendable, because we talk openly in the market about the value we've gotten out of all these different initiatives. And we want to make sure that they are real numbers, and we know that, and we can clearly defend them, and they have even been audited.
Okay, excellent. And what are you really looking for from Metis companies in terms of, they offer solutions to the mining industry? What would you look to them for?
Yeah, I think we have a unique opportunity, and it's really going to cause us to maybe challenge the way we think and challenge the way we work. But what I really want the Metis companies to do is try to find ways to collaborate to solve some of our biggest problems. I think our industry has a history of trying to protect data and intellectual property, and I also think that's been a detriment to us. I would say that we have global problems that we're trying to solve, and we just can't do that as individuals or even as individual companies. And so I think some of our greatest challenges around things like water treatment, greenhouse gas eliminations, they're going to require integrated solutions. And unfortunately, the way that it is now, it's left to the mining companies to try to integrate this. And if I were to give you an analogy, I would use an analogy of a smartphone. What it's like today for a mining company, if I want an application, I have to buy the phone and have the application. If I want a different application, I have to buy a different phone. So I'm running around with 50 phones. Each phone has its own application. I want one phone where all the applications there, like what we have with smartphones today. And that's really going to take a different way of thinking about things. And, I would even push it further and say, along that same analogy, it's looking at how we do work more in an open source sort of environment versus tightening down so much on proprietary views of the world. Because again, as the operators, we're trying to integrate solutions. It creates problems for us. We end up being the integrator. And then we're always trying to find ways to tie things together. And I just think that there's more opportunities for, getting better at that. And I think that, if you look back at what we've learned in this COVID experience, this pandemic, we've learned different ways to collaborate. And I think we need to leverage this foundation of trust and working together to focus that on trying to solve some of our biggest technology challenges. So I know it's a big topic, and it's a big challenge I'm putting out there, but that would move the needle.
Yeah. No, I think that is the challenge for the industry, and it's a good challenge to put out there. I mean, are you seeing any signs of or glimmers of hope on that front, where you are seeing people collaborating? I mean, not only between the Metis companies, but maybe between mining companies. I know something like safety is a sector or a space where people like to collaborate because it's not a competitive space. Is there anything out there that's giving you hope?
Yeah, so just kind of an extension of the safety analogy, James, you just provided, is the work that I'm seeing with collaboration around tailings management. So Newmont is involved in a couple of different consortium and work groups to improve tailings, because we recognize that is also a huge global issue. I like to say that if any company has a tailings disaster, we all have a tailings disaster, because it really impacts the entire industry. And it's not something any one of us wants to see. It's in everybody's best interest to get that right. And we don't have to look at that as proprietary knowledge. That's things we need to share. So there are examples of things like that. I'm also seeing companies start to do a little bit more on the integration side, but it's more that they're just expanding their offering instead of really reaching out and collaborating with others. And I think there's still opportunities there with the Metis companies.
Yeah. Okay, well, excellent. Thank you, Dean. I think that's a great challenge to put out to the industry and a great way to kind of close out our discussion today. But thanks very much for your time. Really appreciated some great insights that you gave us. And thanks for your time, and let's enjoy the rest of the conference.
Good. Thank you. It was my pleasure. Thanks for having me.
DRA Global is a leading international engineering, project delivery and operations management group with an impressive track record spanning more than 3 decades. DRA Global's team of experts drive innovation through world-class consulting services and support clients across multiple sectors to achieve their goals in minerals and metals processing, mining, infrastructure, energy, water, industrial, operations, maintenance and shutdown services.